All right, with our acquired immune response, all right, and our lymphoid lineage, one of the things that we're going to have associated with the B cells and the T cells are the B cells and T cells undergo a maturation process. And I'll talk more in detail about this a little bit later. But in terms of that, B cells are going to mature in the bone marrow. All right? Like how those letters are matched? That's how I remember it. B cells are going to mature in the bone marrow. T cells are going to mature in the thymus. Okay? Now don't confuse with your anatomy and physiology the thymus and the thyroid. All right? The thyroid gland sits in your neck and secretes thyroid hormone, which regulates a lot of cell processes. The thymus actually is a gland that is sitting over your heart. Okay? And in terms of that, your thymus is very, very active and large in infants and children. As you grow, your thymus actually shrinks, because in terms of that, the bulk of your maturation of your T cells happen when you're young. All right? So in terms of that, the thymus kind of shrinks over time. Usually by the time you're an adult, the thymus is very small. If you're lucky enough to live to, say, age 80 or 90, you're not going to have detectable thymus left, okay? But in terms of that, that's going to be where our lymphocytes are going to mature, and that's going to be part of the maturation process, all right? And in my last video, I talked a little bit about antigen-presenting cells. And I abbreviate that a lot, APC, all right? Antigen-presenting cells are going to become important in activating our T cells, all right? And in terms of antigen-presenting cells, B cells can act as an antigen-presenting cell, all right? And in terms of what makes a cell an antigen-presenting cell is going to be the presence of a particular marker. That marker is known as MHC2. And in terms of this, you're going to have to forgive me because very often I studied muscle development. So I see MHC and I think myosin heavy chain. This does not mean myosin heavy chain, okay? In immunology, anytime you see MHC, it's talking about major histocompatibility complex, okay? So in terms of that major histocompatibility complex, MHC2 is found on the outside of any antigen-presenting cell, all right? And in terms of those antigen-presenting cells, certain cells, like the dendritic cells, our macrophages, and B cells, are going to have MHC2 on the outside of it, all right? There is also a marker known as MHC1, or major histocompatibility complex 1, all right? That MHC1 is the tag on your eukaryotic cells eukaryotic cells that essentially allow your immune system to distinguish self from non-self. Because one of the things that is really, really important in terms of specific immunity is being able to recognize self versus non-self. All right? Non-self would be our pathogens or really any foreign material. All right? Because you don't want your T cells or your B cells to start tagging the cells in your body for destruction. That's typically what happens with folks who have autoimmune disease. Their body is no longer able to distinguish self from non-self. And the major protein that's involved in that process is major histone compatibility complex 1, MHC1. All right? So MHC1 is going to be found on all of your nucleated cells within your body. All right? MHC2 is found on the outside of the antigen-presenting cells. All right? So antigen-presenting cells may have both MHC1 and MHC2. But the rest of your eukaryotic cells don't have MHC2. Only an antigen-presenting cell is going to have MHC2 on the outside of it. All right? I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, please let me know.